recording right now.
Okay.
All right. So Elizabeth, I watched your recorded lesson that you did together with your co-teacher. Can you just very briefly tell me what the objective was for your lesson, and what you were trying to accomplish?
Right. So I'm still obviously working. That's probably going to be one goal is the learning and the success criteria, because sometimes we just kind of jump into it and start talking. But what I was trying to do in that lesson is kind of just connect the content with like, what they feel, what they know. So we talked about, during that time, we're talking about the Industrial Revolution. So I wanted them to think like, okay, what do you think is the appropriate age for kids to start working? Because, back then there were no laws on child labor. Who do you think should provide? And these are questions not even for them to just think of today, but when they get older, to even have already been exposed to that. So it was kind of cool to see some of their responses as far as what they believe on who should be paid more versus who actually gets paid more. So it was more of just kind of like a free discussion, because I want them to be able to, express themselves, even though we might have different opinions. Me and my co-teacher have different opinions on some things. But nonetheless, we still, voice it out so the kids kind of know that there's not like one way to go about it. But I was mainly connecting the labor laws and things from Industrial Revolution, because we had just talked about it the previous meeting. So that's what I just wanted to do, like a little discussion with them, like a guided. And I did use attempted to use, some of them did really good, but the waterfall thing, some of them, get too excited and just answer automatically.
It takes a little practice. I found that it's the best, like your best students who always screw up and send their message before you get ready.
I'm sorry, but it worked pretty well as far as like, then they're like, okay, they're waiting.
Yeah. So a couple things from what you just told me. I think it's great that you and your co-teacher essentially model what it looks like to have a civil discourse. That's incredibly important. Based on the discussion that you did have with your class, I feel like you're meeting the standards of engaging effectively with a range of collaborative discussions. The Industrial Revolution, I have found, is a really fun and interesting thing to teach because it is something you can make relatable to students. Luckily, none of our students have ever worked 18-hour days, 6 days a week, but all of our students have done yard work at one point in their lives. They've all done some sort of chore, right? So it is relatable to them. Did you feel like you had an opportunity to incorporate more primary source documents?
Yeah, definitely. So it was kind of like a more free discussion, but I feel like in order to kind of super related to content, because it was more of just hearing from them, getting their opinions type deal, I could have, had primary sources. The day before, we had seen a lot of pictures of kids working like the coal mines. So what I could have done is just brought those pictures back up as we were talking, to remind them, what we were talking about. But I did show them a few of, those factory worker pictures. You have really small children, things like that. And, the facts of, as we did talk, I did tell them like, okay, well, what is the legal age here in California, which a lot of people don't know. And then, so I definitely could have had something up as I was going through the questions with them. I know I could add that next time. But I know I did this in my class last year. And what I did was I asked the questions on a screen, and then everybody was up. And then so A is one corner, B is another corner, C and D. So every time I would ask a question, they would move across the room, and then they would talk to their group together about why they chose their answer, and then they would share out. Here, I couldn't really do that because they would be, breakout rooms, and I don't think it would have been as successful.
Yeah.
I would have had to call them back right away.
How about doing some kind of live document where the students can actually click and move like a little emoji of
Oh,
a
right. That would
student
have been
into
cool.
their respective corners, so students can see quantitatively where the class
Yeah,
lies.
for sure. I didn't even think of that. Kind of like a, like I said, I kind of was trying to like transfer it from the classroom virtually. So
Yeah,
I was just, I like that they were actually participating, you know, because again, it was related to them, right? You know,
yeah, yeah.
today in a sense.
Yeah, so I think you did a great job of integrating multiple sources of information, and you presented these in diverse sources of media. You had text, you had images, and there's certainly, I mean, there aren't too many videos, but there are videos out there, of course. There are a lot of secondary hand sources that we can still look at.
Yeah.
We can, if you want to make the media even more diverse, you can look at some of the experiences of child laborers, and then you can reevaluate those experiences with the interviews that those former child laborers gave later in life as adults.
Right.
You might want to check out, if you haven't already, the Sadler Commission. That was a series of interviews done in England, actually, with a bunch of former child laborers, but the same context is applicable here in the
Right.
US.
I mean, yeah, even thinking about it now is also looking at, once we do have the discussion, kind of like a follow-up would be looking at those different countries that do industrialize and how it affects each area differently. You
Yes,
know, so versus,
absolutely. And again, it's all about making it relatable to the students.
mhm.
So one of the things that I incorporated this year into my lessons on the Industrial Revolution that I haven't in the past was not only the impact on society, on culture, but also on climate. Right? That is one of the new standards that's being added, and for obvious reasons, it needs to
Yeah,
be a major focus.
yeah, definitely. Okay.
So
Yeah,
I
I
think,
do need to work on, like I said, uh more of like the learning objectives and the success criteria, and not just assuming like, okay, this is what we're learning, so
yeah, yeah.
that's it.
I think one other area of growth is maybe try to restructure the way you pose questions so they elicit more elaboration.
Okay.
So they're a little more open-ended. You know, instead
Okay.
of saying, well, what did who invented the Bessemer process?
Yeah.
Okay, so like, who invented the cotton gin? So if you know it's Eli Whitney, great. I mean, I guess that's important to know. But
Right.
why was the cotton gin truly relevant? What impact did it really have? I think those questions that require a bit more elaboration might be a little
Right.
more helpful for them.
Okay.
All right. So now that you've given your lesson, when do you think you're going to be ready to assess student learning for the topics you covered?
So I think that's probably going to be in the final, because I had thought of maybe doing something about also like picking what they wanted to do, but I was like, no, maybe we should wrap up the Industrial Revolution. So I think that's what the final is going to be on more,
Okay.
Industrial Revolution instead of, you know, picking themselves.
Yeah.
Just 'cause it's a lot that we've been covering and we've spent some time on it. So I do need to, what I do want to work on too is like a self-assessment, because I was reading, um, you know, the goals and areas of growth. And I feel like I want to work on that self-assessment with them. Like, hey, do you feel you could teach this, or do you need more time on this? Are you good to move on individually? So I don't know if I would do more of like a, if that would be like a Google form or something, like, but I think kind of checkpoints throughout the unit in order to know like, okay, maybe I need to reteach this or go over this again. So
Yeah. So what I do with my students is every once in a while, I'll just be like, hey, Elizabeth, what are we learning? And if
okay.
you say the Industrial Revolution, then that's not the answer I'm looking for, right?
Okay.
What the answer I'm looking for is I would want you to say like, oh, we're learning how the Bessemer process made it possible for the construction of modern cities,
Right.
right?
Okay.
So if you can ask them at any time, what are we doing and why are we doing it?
Okay.
Then I think that's a really good way to check for understanding.
Yeah, so I definitely want to work on that. Like I said, more like self-assessment with themselves, like even all of them, the few that participate. But I want to make sure that they know what they are good on and what they need more time.
Yeah. You also mentioned giving the kids some options, but you said, I was going to give them options, but I'm deciding to stay with the Industrial Revolution. Keep
Yeah.
in mind, the Industrial Revolution is a massive topic, right?
Yeah.
And
So,
there can still be a huge amount of choice for students. I
yeah.
mean, you have everything from, child labor, how did women's roles change, what effect did it have on civil rights and migration, labor laws, you can do unions, safety. I mean, heck, you can do just building of bridges,
Yeah. I was
there are,
looking into definitely I'm going to create like a topics list just so they're not just like, oh, it's not an entire review. I feel like it'll probably have a like kind of like I said, a general, not a general question, but like an overarching question, and then they can choose what they want to go into. Because like you said, there's a lot. So if someone wanted to like focus on a certain invention and explain how, that contributed to it, or if people want to look into urbanization, certain things like that. So I am going to create a list just so it's not as just pick whatever, and then I'm going to have them choose. And like I said, I'll probably do where if they want to do like a Google Slides, or if they want to write a paper. I doubt I'll get a lot of people to write, but I know I have some
yeah.
really frightened, like they don't even want to speak. I tell them they don't have to turn on their camera, but they don't even want to engage at all.
Yeah.
So that's why I have that option. And then, like I said, some type of video, or like you said, I hadn't even thought of that, like building something, but also having kind of like a written to explain it. So if they build, a model type thing.
Yeah. And I mean, you can also have them choose modern issues
Mm-hmm.
and tie that back into the Industrial Revolution. You mentioned urbanization. I mean, you can talk about school funding and how urbanization patterns led to certain school districts being better funded than others. There's, I mean, gosh, it seems endless, like the supply of topics that we could cover with this.
Because you can also, cover. So I was gonna put like the economic systems that is a response to it. So you put like talk about like capitalism, communism, and those are things that are still alive today.
Yeah, I mean, questions like did the Industrial Revolution make life better for the average? I don't know if middle class is the right word to use yet, but to the average worker, I guess you could say. Did it improve the life of the average woman, of the average immigrant?
Yeah, so I mean, that's why I figured I could stay with Industrial Revolution, because there's so much to choose from.
Yeah, absolutely. So, are you, when you, in terms of the Industrial Revolution, are you talking mostly like major inventions, urbanization, child
We
labor?
did touch on that. We touched on urbanization. I did even cover like like pollution, or there's no regulations at this time. And I kept telling them, it's something brand new, right? So when you have something brand new, you usually don't have any type of rules because you're working through it as things happen.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's because of this that now we have regulations in everything, literally, as far as like climate. Or I'm like, you do have private companies, but there are regulations too now, because that created monopolies and people taking advantage of other people. So I did, in a sense, try to hit a few of everything.
Mhm.
And like you said, it's a lot. So I did try to look into maybe what they would either be more interested in or tie together into, like, hey, during this time as well, it's where we get this whole idea that we need an assembly line, in the education system as well. And we decide this is what you're going to learn in school, and we're going to move you along in this little lovely, little system we have that hasn't changed since then.
That's super interesting, the way our school is set up like an assembly line.
Yeah, and it's pretty crazy, but I told him, that's where they decided, like, hey, we need educated, skilled workers, but not so much super educated. It's more of like being able to read, write, and do like arithmetic.
And not to mention the fact that we're still giving kids off time to work the farms every summer.
Right. I forgot about that. I totally forgot to mention that that's why we start school when we start, and why people had to be off by a certain date, because they had to go home and work and help their family.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely did mention, the education system.
Yeah. No, and that's great, because of course in these children's lives, their school is a huge chunk of their life.
Yeah.
So I think you're doing a great job of making this information relevant to the students. Apart from what you were actually teaching, going back to the beginning, I really liked that both you and your co-teacher welcomed students by name. I think that's wonderful, making them feel safe. As you said, there are still students who are scared to say a single word, so creating that safe environment is very important. You also, I think, did a really good job of reminding them of upcoming important dates, like the end of the quarter, so you're helping them with their long-term planning as well, which is really important given how unstructured our system is right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, I think you're doing great. You have some opportunities for growth, which you recognized, and I look forward to seeing what you do next time.
All right, sounds good. So we only need 3 of these, technically? Or
3 observations?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, there's 4 inquiry cycles and 3 observations.
Okay.
Okay, so for our next observation, again, I'll leave it up to you. We can do something like this again. I can observe you. You and I can go observe someone else. You let me know what is going to work best for you.
Okay, sounds good.
It might be a good idea if we go observe someone else. We have some really good teachers out there, and it wouldn't hurt for us to go see what they're doing. So
that's true.
If there's any one particular, like Jennifer Lovelady always comes into mind for me.
Yeah.
If there's anyone that you would like to see, let me know and I'll set it up.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. All right, Elizabeth, great work.
Thank you
so much. Let me stop the recording.